Close your eyes. Let the noise of the world fall away for one breath. Feel the weight that has settled on your shoulders. The endless notifications, the quiet anxiety that greets you before dawn, the growing fear that your life is slipping through fingers that were once meant to build empires. You're not weak. You're simply living in a time that has forgotten the ancient art of mastery. Centuries ago, in the mist-covered mountains of feudal Japan, a lone samurai would rise in absolute darkness, bow to the unseen horizon, and begin his day with the precision of a blade cut of silk. He did not bargain with discomfort. He did not negotiate with distraction. He lived by a code that turned ordinary men into legends who still echo through history. That code has not vanished. It sleeps inside the quiet center of your chest, waiting for the moment you decide to awaken it. I speak now to the man or woman who feels the fire inside dimming, to the soul exhausted by reacting instead of creating, to every heart tired of anxiety ruling the morning, envy poisoning the afternoon, and regret haunting the night. This is not motivation for the moment. This is a lifelong initiation into the way of a warrior. Together we will walk the blood-stained paths of the samurai. We will sit in the stone silence of Zen monasteries where monks trained their minds like steel. We will stand beside the Stoic emperors who commanded nations yet remained unshaken by fate. You will learn to observe emotion the way a master swordsman watches the flicker of an opponent's wrist, calmly, instantly, completely in control. By the time this hour ends, the chains you carry will feel lighter. The voice that once panicked will speak with quiet authority. You will no longer be swept away by feelings. You will become their sovereign ruler. The transformation does not require years in a monastery or a battlefield. It begins the instant you choose it. So breathe with me, deep into the belly. Hold, release, and step forward with me now into the ancient path that has never failed those who walked it with honor. The journey of Stoic strength starts here. The modern struggle. Picture this. Dawn breaks over a quiet suburb in any city across the West. A man in his 30s opens his eyes, reaches for the phone before his feet even touch the floor, and immediately steps into a storm of other people's lives. Likes, comments, headlines screaming crisis. A friend's vacation photo that stings like salt in an unseen wound. By the time he stands in the shower, his mind is already racing through a dozen unfinished conversations and imagined failures. Discipline feels like a distant memory from childhood, something teachers once demanded but the adult world quietly abandoned. Purpose? It has been traded for convenience, for the next hit of digital approval, for the illusion that constant connection equals meaning. This is the modern struggle, and it is more dangerous than any battlefield our ancestors faced because it is invisible. It wears the mask of normal. We wake up already behind. The algorithm knows our weaknesses better than we know ourselves. It serves us exactly what keeps us scrolling: outrage, envy, comparison. Each swipe releases a small burst of dopamine, just enough to keep us chained, never enough to satisfy. Hours vanish, days blur, and at night we lie awake wondering why we feel so empty when the world tells us we have everything. Anxiety has become the background music of our era. It whispers that we are falling behind, that we are not enough, that rest is productivity, and feeling every emotion deeply is wisdom. We pathologize discomfort. We medicate stillness. We call boundary setting what is often just fear of confrontation. The result? A generation of capable people living in quiet defeat. They feel irritation rise in traffic and label it stress. They feel a surge of envy when a colleague is promoted and call it healthy ambition. They feel the hollow ache of an evening alone with their thoughts and reach for another episode, another drink, another distraction. Anything to avoid the silence where truth waits. We have lost the training our ancestors considered essential for a human life. Schools taught compliance, not inner command. Social media taught performance, not presence. Comfort sold us softness wrapped in the language of self-love. And slowly, The mind that was once a fortress became a crowded marketplace of other people's opinions. But here is what the ancient warriors understood that we have forgotten. A mind without discipline is not free. It is occupied territory. Every unchecked impulse becomes a ruler. Every distraction becomes a chain. Every emotional storm becomes a shipwreck. You feel it, don't you? That low, constant pressure, like carrying armor you never chose to wear. The sense that life is happening to you rather than flowing through you with power and direction. This is not a flaw in your character. This is the predictable outcome of a culture that removed every forge and then wondered why the steel grew soft. Yet the same discomfort you have been running from is the exact material needed to remake you. The fatigue you feel at the end of another reactive day is the signal that something greater is calling. The anxiety that tightens your chest is not an enemy to be medicated. It is a messenger reminding you that you were born for more than this endless cycle. The samurai never waited for perfect conditions. They trained in rain, in snow, in grief, in victory. They understood that the battlefield of the mind must be won before any external war can be fought. You still carry their blood. The same capacity for unbreakable focus, for calm in chaos, for purpose that outlives comfort. It has simply been buried under layers of noise and easy choices. Breathe into that truth. Feel the warrior inside stir, as if waking from a long sleep. The struggle you are living right now is not punishment. It is the invitation. Every time you choose silence over scrolling, presence over reaction, effort over escape, you are stepping onto the path that has produced the strongest humans in history. The modern world did not remove your power. It only hid it. And today, we begin the work of uncovering it. Samurai discipline and history. The year is 1600. Sekigahara. The fields run thick with mist and the promise of decisive war. Two massive armies face each other across a narrow valley. On one side, the forces loyal to the Toyotomi legacy. On the other, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the man who would unify Japan and begin 2.5 centuries of peace. Among his retainers stood warriors who had trained since childhood in the shadow of death. They did not fight for glory alone. They fought as living expressions of a code that had been forged through centuries of chaos. That code was Bushido. From the Kamakura period onward, the samurai class rose as protectors in a land torn by civil war. Boys as young as 7 were taken from their mothers and placed under the strict tutelage of veteran warriors. Their days began before sunrise with cold water immersion. Then hours of sword forms repeated until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. They studied archery from horseback, learned to write poetry that captured the beauty of a falling cherry blossom, and practiced seated meditation so their minds would remain unshaken even when arrows filled the sky. Discipline was not occasional. It was identity. The 7 virtues of Bushido formed their unbreakable spine. GI rectitude, the ability to see what is right and act without hesitation, even when the cost is everything. Courage, not the loud bravery of youth, but the quiet decision to move forward when fear screams to stop. Benevolence, power tempered by compassion, the strong hand that also lifts the fallen. Respect, the profound bow that acknowledges the dignity in every human encounter. Makoto, sincerity, a life in which word and deed are one seamless truth. Mayo, honor, a reputation so pure that death itself becomes preferable to stain. Chugi, loyalty, devotion that transcends personal gain. Consider the story of the 47 Ronin. Their lord was forced to commit seppuku after striking a corrupt official. For 2 years, the loyal samurai lived as outcasts, pretending to abandon all honor, enduring ridicule and poverty. Then, on a snowy winter night in 1703, they struck with perfect coordination, avenged their master, and presented his enemy's head at his tomb. When ordered to die by the shogun, each man performed seppuku with the same calm precision they had shown in battle. Their final act of loyalty became legend because it proved that true discipline outlives even death. Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the most famous swordsman who ever lived, fought and won more than 60 duels, often against opponents far more experienced. He attributed his mastery not to superior technique alone, but to a mind trained in total presence. In his later years, living as a hermit in a cave, he composed the Book of Five Rings. In it he wrote that the warrior must treat every moment as combat. Eating, walking, breathing, each breath becomes training. Distraction is defeat. Hesitation is death. The samurai face mortality every single day. They composed death poems before battles, visualizing their own end so completely that fear lost its power. They lived as though already dead, and in that radical acceptance, they became free to live with total intensity. Their training forged minds of diamond clarity. A warrior whose lord was killed did not collapse into despair. He either fulfilled his duty of vengeance or ended his own life with ceremonial composure. Emotion was acknowledged, felt deeply, then set aside like a tool returned to its sheath. You do not need feudal Japan to walk this path. You need only the same refusal to let comfort define you. Refuse to let a notification pull you from deep work. Refuse to let anger steer your words in an important conversation. Refuse to let the easy path become your daily choice. The samurai did not try to be disciplined on good days. Discipline was the ground they stood on. That ground is still beneath your feet. All that remains is to step onto it with the same reverence they showed their blades. When you do, you will discover what they discovered. A mind trained in this way does not break under pressure. It becomes the pressure that shapes the world. Monk discipline and power of silence. High above the city of Kyoto, where ancient cedars whisper secrets to the wind, the Zen monasteries have stood for over 800 years. Inside their plain wooden halls, men in simple black robes sit motionless for hours before the first light touches the mountains. This is zazen, seated meditation, not as relaxation, but as the deliberate dismantling of the false self. The monk enters the zendo. He arranges his robes with precision, folds his legs into full lotus, straightens his spine until it becomes a pillar connecting heaven and earth. The bell rings once, and for the next 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours, the only instruction is this: return to the breath. Thoughts arrive like uninvited guests. Regrets from yesterday, fears for tomorrow, the endless chatter of I am this, I am that. The monk does not fight them. He does not indulge them. He watches them arise and dissolve the way a mountain watches clouds. Each return to the breath is a small death of the ego and a rebirth of pure awareness. This is the power of silence. In silence, you meet the raw material of your mind without distraction, without entertainment, without escape. The first days are torture for most. The body screams. The mind riots. Boredom becomes a living entity. Yet those who stay discover something extraordinary. 95% of suffering is self-created. The remaining 5% is life itself. And when met with trained awareness, even that can be born with grace. The great Zen master Dogen, who brought Soto Zen from China to Japan in the 13th century, taught that meditation is not a means to an end, is the end. To sit is to already be Buddha. In that sitting, time collapses. Past and future dissolve. Only this moment remains, the only place where a warrior can ever act. Takuan Soho, Zen advisor to legendary swordsmen, wrote letters that became sacred texts for the samurai. He compared the trained mind to water. When calm, it reflects everything perfectly. When disturbed by anger or fear, it becomes murky and useless. The sword cannot move freely through a frozen mind. Only through flowing awareness can the blade find its true path. Modern silent retreats follow the same ancient pattern. 10 days, no speaking, no reading, no eye contact, no external input whatsoever. On day 3, participants often feel they are losing their minds. On day 7, something cracks open. They realize the voice they called me is mostly noise. What remains beneath is vast, calm, and powerful. The same presence a samurai needed when facing an opponent who intended to end his life. You do not need to travel to Japan or enter a monastery to taste this power. Begin tomorrow morning. Set your alarm 20 minutes earlier. Sit on the floor or a firm cushion. Spine straight. Eyes half closed. Gaze soft. Set a gentle timer when thoughts come, and they will. Smile inwardly and return to the sensation of breath entering and leaving your body. Each return is a victory. Each victory strengthens the muscle of awareness. After 30 days, you will notice something profound. Emotions still arise, but they no longer own you. They pass through like weather across a mountain. That same integrated strength is available to you. Silence is the door. Discipline is the key. Turn it. Stoic and mental toughness lessons. On the frozen banks of the Danube River, in the year 170 AD, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius sat in his tent by lamplight while barbarian tribes gathered for attack. He was the most powerful man alive, ruler of an empire that stretched from Britain to the Middle East. Yet every night he wrote in his private journal words meant only for himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Half a world away and centuries earlier, the samurai lived the exact same principle. When their lord fell in battle, they did not dissolve into grief. They acted with clarity or chose honorable death with perfect composure. Emotion was never denied. It was simply never allowed to command. This is the living fusion of Stoicism and the warrior mind. The Stoics gave us the dichotomy of control. What is up to you? Your judgments, your efforts, your integrity, your response. What is not? Other people's opinions, market conditions, the weather, the past, the actions of others. Train yourself relentlessly to invest energy only in the first list. Everything else is noise. Epictetus, born a slave and later freed, taught that it is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. A samurai facing overwhelming odds did not waste time wishing for easier circumstances. He sharpened his focus, steadied his breath, and moved with total commitment to the present action. Practice the Stoic technique of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. Each evening, calmly ask yourself, what difficulties might tomorrow bring? How will I respond with virtue rather than reaction? When the moment arrives, you are not ambushed by emotion. You are prepared. Blend this with samurai immediacy. When anger rises in your chest during a difficult conversation, do not suppress it and do not obey it. Observe it like the Zen monk, coolly, without judgment. Then act like the warrior. One precise sentence, one deliberate action, rooted in rectitude. Mental toughness is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to feel everything fully while remaining the master of your response. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The samurai understood this viscerally. They visualized their own death so completely that the fear of it lost its grip. You can use the same practice in modern life. Before an important meeting, a difficult conversation, or a high-stakes decision, spend 5 minutes imagining the worst possible outcome in vivid detail. Then ask, if this happens, what virtue can I still embody? The anxiety that once paralyzed you will shrink to manageable size. The warrior path demands that you become the eye of the storm. External chaos may rage, but inside remains absolute calm command. You will lose friends who preferred the old reactive version of you. You will gain the quiet respect of everyone who senses the new depth in your presence. This is Stoic strength in action. The strength that built empires, that survived exile, that faced death with dignity, and that can carry you through any modern challenge with the same unshakable core. Applying warrior mindset today. The battlefield has changed its face, but the principles remain eternal. No castles to defend, no swords to draw, only the quiet, relentless wars of daily life. Deadlines, relationships, the endless pull of distraction. In your career, treat every deep work session as a personal duel. Clear the space completely. Phone in another room, notifications silenced, one single objective before you. When the mind wanders, and it will, return instantly like the monk. Strike forward like the samurai. 90 uninterrupted minutes of total presence will outperform 8 hours of fragmented attention. In relationships, the person who can remain centered while the other person loses composure becomes the natural leader. Listen without preparing your rebuttal. Speak truth without cruelty or apology. Love without clinging or neediness. When triggered, pause for 3 conscious breaths. Ask yourself, is this within my control? What virtue does this moment demand? Your calm presence will become more attractive and more powerful than any grand gesture. For unbreakable focus, create daily death ground blocks, periods where retreat is not an option. No music, no checking, no escape. The resistance you feel is the forge heating up. Stay. The mind that learns to remain in the fire emerges tempered and sharp. In physical training, move like a warrior. Lift weights with full attention to form and breath. Run not for the endorphin hit, but for the discipline of continuing when every cell screams to stop. Eat not for pleasure alone, but as fuel for a body that must obey a sovereign mind. Silence training is no longer optional. Dedicate 1 full hour every week to absolute digital and social silence. No devices, no talking, no input, just you and the raw experience of being. You will discover how much of what you call personality is actually accumulated noise. Beneath it waits the clear, powerful self the ancients knew. When setbacks come, and they will, respond as the samurai did. No self-pity, no long stories of victimhood. Name the lesson, correct the course, and continue with renewed commitment. The warrior does not negotiate with weakness. He simply refuses to feed it. Apply these truths consistently, and you will watch your life transform from a series of reactions into a deliberate masterpiece of presence and power.